Vice President Mike Pence did one of the Republicans' favorite pastimes, and he invoked MLK to back a reactionary agenda. So take a look at this. Vice President Mike Pence on Sunday invoked Martin Luther King Jr. in urging Congress to accept President Trump's latest proposal to reopen the government, which includes funding for a wall along the southern border and protections for certain immigrants. Pence asserted on CBS's Face the Nation that Trump's pitch made on Saturday would end the shutdown while addressing both his priorities and Democratic priorities. He then noted the upcoming holiday in King's honor. Quote, but one of my favorite quotes from Dr. King was, "Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy," Pence said, quoting from the I Have a Dream speech. You think of how he changed America. He inspired us to change through the legislative process, to become a more perfect union. That's exactly what President Trump is calling on the Congress to do. The vice president continued, come to the table in a spirit of good faith. We'll secure our border, we'll reopen the government, and we'll move our nation forward, as the president said yesterday, to even a broader discussion about immigration reform in the months ahead. He's comparing Trump and his shitty, non-compromise compromise to Martin Luther King. That's embarrassingly stupid. So first of all, let's just state the reality of the situation here. Democrats and Republicans in Congress have repeatedly put bills on Trump's desk saying, we're going to reopen the government. We're going to reopen the government. We're going to do border security, not a wall though, but border security, but we're going to reopen the government. And by the way, there's 800,000 government workers who aren't getting paid and they're fucking relying on GoFundMe and the whole system's a goddamn mess and you're an idiot and fuck you. So his non-compromise compromise was, all right, fine, you give me my wall. And then I'll give you, I took away protections for the Dreamers, so I'll give you 3 years of protection for the Dreamers if you give me my wall. So you took something away and then you're going to give it back in return for a wall. How about no? Again, multiple bills have been put on his desk. Let's reopen the government. 70% of congressional Republicans are like, let's reopen the government. Trump and McConnell are the ones blocking it. And then they have the nerve, Mike Pence, to say, this is so much like Dr. King. See, this is, in a weird way, this is one of the reasons why I dislike Pence just as much as I dislike Trump, or if anything, I might even dislike Pence a little more. Because he's so fucking weaselly and conniving. Like, for a terrible, disgusting, reactionary agenda, he puts on this, I'm a polite man who speaks in a very above the fray way, and I am going to tell you the truth about stuff, and then he goes on to say idiotic things like comparing Trump to Martin Luther King. So that, to me, that's even worse than the babbling idiot who speaks in fucking sentence fragments and can't get out of that, like Trump, who just kind of lays it out there and he's too dumb to play any kind of higher-minded politics. Whereas Pence, for the exact same agenda as Trump, he trots out the bullshit in a way that's just fucking mind-boggling. And this kind of shit hypnotizes the rest of mainstream media. Is like, oh man, Trump, Pence, he speaks in full sentences. Obviously, he's a better guy than Trump. No, look at the shit he's saying. He's comparing Martin Luther King to fucking Trump and Trump's shitty non-compromise. As if Martin Luther King's agenda was like, all right, we all agree, right? Fuck the immigrants. That's right, fuck the immigrants. Okay, nothing is more frustrating than when Republicans try to hijack the legacy of MLK and act like he would agree with us if he was around today. Bitch, we just did this segment. Here are some quotes from MLK. The U.S. government is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world. That sounds a hell of a lot more like Noam Chomsky than it does Mitt Romney. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death. Of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane. Does that sound like Milton Friedman to you? Not even close. I imagine you already know that I am much more socialistic in my economic theory than capitalistic. Call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, but there must be a better distribution of wealth within this country for all of God's children. He supported universal basic income. I have a quote here where he supports universal basic income. So for Pence to be like, well, Martin Luther King is one of my favorites, I must say. No, you would fucking fight him every step of the way, tooth and nail, if he was alive today. That's not a question. That's just a hardcore reality of the situation. So spare me your bullshit, man. It's like it's bullshitting on the next level. It's record-breaking bullshit. I can't stand these guys. Like, at least it's one thing if you're a piece of shit and you're wrong, but you come as advertised. And that's somewhat kind of like what Trump is. Like, he's a piece of shit and he's wrong, but at least he comes as advertised. Whereas Pence polishes himself up and he's like, yes, I'm a serious person. And he just fucking he puts a fire hose of bullshit in your mouth and turns it on high. That's what Pence does. And I hate it, and I can't stand it. And he's a liar, and he's a piece of shit, and he's wrong. And everybody needs to understand that. Just because he speaks in full sentences and he tries to act like he's polite doesn't mean he's not a horrendous person, because he is.